Well, folks, we are blessed to have a man by the name of Scott Harmon on today's edition of Beat Diabetes. Scott, welcome to Beat Diabetes.
Hey, thank you, Dennis, and thanks for having me on to share my
Well,
story.
it is a pleasure to have you. And one of the things that you wrote to me that really got my attention, you'd kind of shared some of your progress for some months, I suppose. And at one point, you sent me an email and said, "Success, success, success." You repeated it 3 times. So I thought, wow, this guy's doing pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was shocking to hear the words "you're a diabetic," right?
Yeah.
And what complications that came with was I've always been an athlete in college, and I never thought of myself as being diabetic or anything like that. So it was a wake up call for me that I was eating way too many sugars and carbs, and I had to do something about it. And I poured myself into the internet to find out different YouTube channels that were addressing this issue. I didn't want to.
Now, let me interrupt for a minute and ask this question. What was it that sent you to the doctor in the first place that enabled you to figure out you were diabetic? Did you have symptoms, or was this just a normal checkup?
So looking back, the symptoms were there. Myopathy in the legs and peeing all the time, urination. But I didn't think much of it. I just thought, hey, I'm getting older, and maybe that's just what happens when you get older. So where it started was I had to start taking these tests for my wife's work, where we have our health insurance, to lower our rates so they could see your blood workup and where you were. And the first time we took it, COVID hit. And so there wasn't much of a follow-up. And my A1C was a 9.8. And I didn't think anything of it. So
you were not told that's pretty bad?
So that at that time, we didn't have to do these counselings because it was COVID, and they said you don't have to counsel. But after the second time, a year later, they said, hey, your blood sugar is high and you should talk to a doctor. And that's where I set up a Zoom meeting with my wife's doctor. And I think I had mentioned to you that our insurance wasn't taken by my primary care doctor, so I had to switch doctors. At that time, when we did the initial Zoom meeting, she just came right out and said, "You're a diabetic." And I was like, wait a minute now, how could that be? She wanted to immediately put me on metformin and talk about maybe doing some insulin injections. And I said, well, let me research this a little bit and see if there's another alternative like exercise and diet that might help. And lo and behold, I found that a low carb diet was the way to go without having to be put on metformin or insulin.
Yeah. Did it take you very long to figure that out? And what were the primary things that you read or heard or watched that convinced you of that?
Well, a lot of your channel and Dr. Berry and the carnivore diet, I thought, hey, maybe that's something I could do. It's not for me, the carnivore diet. I do want to have some carbs in my life. It's too stringent of a diet for me. I don't think I could really stick to it. There'd be too much cheating in there. So I thought, hey, if it doesn't work, and I told the doctor this, if this doesn't work, then I'll go on your plan of medicine to help keep my blood sugar down. One of the key factors I thought was, well, even if I'm controlling my blood sugar, I'm not controlling my insulin. And insulin, from everything I read and studied, was the bane of all the bad things that could happen to you. Strokes and heart attacks and losing legs and eyesight. And I thought, hey, I just need to figure out a different way. So I took your a challenge, right? You had a challenge going on, and I thought, why don't I try to go without carbs for 3 weeks? And I managed to do it, and it was tough. I mean, I went through headaches, withdrawal from sugar, no medications. And I will say this, the year before, I wanted to be able to ski like I used to. So I was almost 300 pounds when I when I started watching what I was eating. I eliminated sodas. I didn't even know I was diabetic, and started cutting way back on carbs then, and managed to get down to 236 pounds. And I was like, okay, so we're on the right track. The shocking truth was, though, in July of 2022, even after a year of exercising and watching what I was eating, I was still had an 8.7 A1C, which is still really, really elevated.
After exercising and losing weight, Scott still had an A1C of 8.7. Many people erroneously assume that if you do these things, if you exercise a lot and lose a lot of weight, you will surely defeat diabetes. And that can help, but Scott had not yet addressed the elephant in the room, which was diet. Next, Scott talks about the basic method by which he started bringing his runaway blood sugar under control. And guess what? It involved testing his glucose.
I think at my some of my peaks, when I started testing my blood sugar, and I was really interested in how does my blood sugar react to what I eat. And I was like, okay, so if I eat a potato and I go to 250, then that's not something I should be eating. So I did a lot of that testing, very much like what you did when you got started with this many, many years ago. And then I found out what works for me. What's the thing that works best for me?
I found out what works best for me. Well, that says it all. And it turns out that what worked best for Scott is what works best for most of us, which is to significantly reduce the carbohydrates in our diets. We may have differences over certain specific foods, but generally speaking, when we start testing our post-meal blood sugar spikes, we nearly all come to the same conclusions.
And everyone's different. Like I can't eat blueberries; they spike my blood sugar, but I can eat strawberries.
Okay. Now, so you learn to test your foods, and tell us some of the good guys and bad guys you discovered. Everybody always wants to know specifically which foods work. And like you say, they can be different for different ones of us. But in your case, what were some of the guys that were bad, the guys that were acceptable, and what were some of the surprises you found as you tested your blood sugar?
So anything from the center of the supermarket, the processed foods, the crackers, the potato chips, obviously I knew the sodas they have sugar in them. Anything potatoes, and I had to give up my favorite food, which was French fries, and I'm okay with that now. I don't need to eat French fries. So the things that I found that were the best for me were things like cabbage and Brussels sprouts and cauliflower. It seems like I could eat as much as that as I wanted. So without really having much of a spike, maybe 10 or 15 points of blood sugar. Lots of protein and fat seem to really help out a lot too. So steaks and it's all your fish and all those types of chicken and things that don't really affect my blood sugar very much at all.
Yeah. So tell us about your progress with your A1Cs from the initial 9-something A1C. How long did it take you to start getting down closer to reasonable blood sugar levels and A1Cs?
So once I got really motivated and educated and knew what was going to spike my blood sugar and stayed away from those things and tested anything new and continued to test.
Scott tested anything new and he continued to test. Just so you get it, this means determining how high various foods and meals spike your blood sugar by testing your glucose about an hour and a half after eating a meal or a food and seeing how high your blood sugar rises. You will quickly see a huge difference between one food and another. And with this knowledge, you can begin to craft a diabetes-busting diet that will work powerfully and quickly in bringing down your glucose levels.
In August, I had I was 8.7 in July. In August, I was 7.8. In September, I was 7.5. And that's where I kind of thought, is this really going to work? And then I started watching more of your things, and it got down to the thing that really set me forward in getting this thing to go down. And that was the intermittent fasting, or the timed eating and fasting. I fasted for 48 hours a week to just really pummel this thing.
Here we see the power of time-restricted eating and occasional longer fasting. Recently, I watched a YouTube video that showed an old man, probably about my age, who apparently had been mocked by a bully, and they decided to settle their differences at a boxing ring in a gym. What the young man probably didn't know was that the old guy had had quite a bit of boxing experience in his youth, and he hadn't forgotten a thing. The old man wasted no time and wailed into the young guy with one hook after another, using both his right and his left hands. In less than a minute, the young guy had been knocked to the canvas. He got up and tried to continue, but in seconds, the old man again pummeled him so fiercely they both knew there was no point in going on, and the old man mercifully took off his gloves and left the ring. Now, that's what it means to beat diabetes through the 1-2 punches, the right and the left hand, of carbohydrate restriction and time-restricted eating. Our former bully, diabetes, does not stand a chance. I asked Scott what he drinks when he fasts for longer periods.
It was water and coffee. That was basically it. So, and I love coffee. Giving up the creamers and the sugars and that was tough, but after a while you get used to it and you prefer it. I find it very good. I tried the whole adding a butter to the coffee. I don't know what they call that.
Bulletproof coffee.
Yeah, I wasn't fond of it. I'm sure I could get used to it, but it wasn't for me. It tasted too much. Maybe I put too much butter in. I don't know.
Yeah.
So September 7.5, and then I really got with it in September and said, okay, intermittent fasting 48 hours a week. And in October, I came down to 6.2, which is down in the pre-diabetic range. And I was really happy with that. And that's where I really thought to myself, I can beat this. This can happen.
I love those words. I can beat this. This can happen. When you reach this point, you've already beaten diabetes. It's just a matter of time now. One of the greatest thrills in the world is when you realize that you are not at the mercy of a terrible enemy that you have no chance in beating. You figure out that you can absolutely control this monster by a new and improved lifestyle and diet. Scott's A1C went from 8.7 in July to 5.1 in December. Our fall 2022 challenge theme was Become Non-Diabetic by Christmas, and Scott had done just that.
I just need to stay the course because it takes a lot of months of being very consistent to make that happen. So November was 5.8. December was the month I sent you the email, success, success, success. I was so happy to be out of pre-diabetes at 5.4. And this January, I was 5.1. So that's a 6-month from start of diagnosis to getting out of the diabetic range.
Yeah. Well, you're getting an A1C every month, which is unusual. Most doctors, the very most they would ask for an A1C would be every 3 months. Were these lab A1Cs or the kind you buy at the store? And why were you doing it monthly? Almost nobody would have told you to do it every month.
I knew I was losing weight and I wanted to see how this progressed every month. So I bought I'm able to buy the tests. They're not crazy expensive, but you can buy the pack that has 4 tests. And I did it every month just to see how it would come down. And it was good evidence to me that I was on the right path, that I wasn't, going.
Well, when you are doing that monthly, you're not really getting your current situation because it's averaging back 3, sometimes as much as 4 months. So if your last A1C was 5.1, but you've been coming down steadily, if you hold the course you're on, you'll probably be in the 4s in about 3 months.
And that's the goal. Yeah, to the goal. One thing over the holidays, I did eat some sugars, right? So some Christmas cookies and a piece of fudge, and but very limited and small amounts of it. My wife's a great baker, and I really enjoy that stuff. Um, but what I found was that even as being a diabetic, that the blood sugar really spiked, like up to 190. And I realized at that point that these were things I shouldn't be eating.
I appreciate Scott being honest and admitting to eating sweets over the holidays. But the thing that made his cheating different from most diabetics is Scott was curious just how high these treats had spiked his blood sugar, and he was immediately motivated to cool it when he tested himself. As he said, I realized that was something I should not be eating. But how would he know that without input from Mike, the glucose meter? Now, the 48-hour fast is going to seem pretty extreme to a lot of people. And I just want to know, are you planning to do this the rest of your life, or were these just emergency interventions that you wanted to get yourself down in a hurry?
Yeah, so I just wanted to get down in a hurry. And so this isn't a lifestyle that I'm going to do forever. I'm in the 5.1. There is no goal line for me. It's a maintenance program at this point, and letting my body recover and get to a homeostasis of some kind. And from there, we'll maybe do a fast once a week, where I'm doing a 24 or 36-hour fast. In the beginning, I think having your stomach shrink, you won't eat quite as much, right. Letting it go for 2 days. And I think if you fall off the wagon and you drink a soda or something and you see your blood sugars are in the morning are very high, that you could do a couple day fast to get yourself back on track.
Yeah. It is so liberating, and I've experienced this, you've experienced this, and we just want to share this with all those that are watching that haven't quite reached the place where they need to be. But it is so liberating to know that you can do things that can make a difference and bring that glucose down. You're not just helpless and hopeless, and all you can do is just suffer along and be a good boy, but you can actually take some steps. And you took some steps and you said, this isn't working fast enough. It's not quite good enough. Then you went to the time restricted eating. You went to some extra fasting. It kind of reminds me of pushing on the gas pedal. When you're in your car and you're going 10 miles an hour, you say, well, I can put my foot down a little harder and go faster. And that's what you did.
Yeah, absolutely. And this all started from being almost 300 pounds and wanting to ski like I used to when I was in my 20s and 30s. And being able to ski with my kids is important to me. And I didn't want to go down the road of obesity and just not being very active. So,
right. Now, describe for us what a typical day looks like in terms of your meals. Not one of your fasting days, but a normal day where you're eating. Well, just tell us how you do it and what you might eat for a typical normal day.
So the 2 meals a day, right, in a 6-hour window. I don't eat before 11, but most of the time between 12 and 1, I have my first meal. I will have a cup of coffee first thing in the morning. I get up relatively early, like at 5 or 6 o'clock, and I'll have a cup of coffee. And that's it until, at least 11. If I'm hungry at 11, I'll eat. If I'm not, then I'll try to stretch it till 12 or 12:30. But then from 1 o'clock till about 6 or 7 at night, I usually eat a dinner around 5:30 or so, 4:30, 5:30, something like that. And depends on when I ate my breakfast, right? So I'm gonna try to get that 6-hour span in between. And what a typical meal looks like is I'll have a breakfast at breakfast. I'll have some scrambled eggs with a piece of bacon and some onions and some green pepper in there. That might be a breakfast for me. Or I might substitute the bacon with some ground beef. And then in the evenings when I eat, the meal are heavy in protein, almost no carbs unless I'm eating a whole food. So I concentrate on the whole foods, like green beans don't really affect me very much if I don't eat very many of them. So I'll have a vegetable or a light salad and a protein, a steak or a hamburger without the bun, obviously, and without tomato. But I might put a poached onion or something on there. And the protein can change from time to time. It's fish or it's pork or it's beef. Those are all perfectly okay for me to eat. And getting creative with the spices. So one time I might have just a regular hamburger with salt and pepper and garlic on it. The next time I might put curry powder on it. Delicious. So just changing it up.
Now, one of the great knocks on low carb or a keto diet is the sustainability. They say, yeah, it might lower your glucose, but you can't sustain it. You'll never be able to do it for very long. How do you feel about that? This kind of eating, like you've just described, is that something you can see yourself doing 10 years from now, 20 years from now?
Yeah, Dennis, I think so. I have no choice in this. So it's either I have all these complications later in life with strokes. My father is a stroke survivor. I wonder if his A1C was out of control. So I think, yes, this is my path. I like being thinner. I like being able to go out. One of the side effects of this diet is that all the inflammation that I was struggling with is gone. The knees, the ankles, the back, all of these things that I thought, oh, that's just from wear and tear from a sports athlete and being too active when I was younger. And it's not. It comes right down to the inflammation from sugars.
Yeah, that is so important. We need to say it again. And what Scott has just said is all the inflammation I was dealing with is now gone. And I just hear that so often. You even emailed me and said you had been hiking in the mountains, and before you'd have all kinds of pains and sores, and now it doesn't seem to bother you, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So yeah, I think the message to everybody is this is going on. It's a tidal wave of folks figuring out how to eat right, and it can work for you. And pray and give it some time. I mean, it takes 6 months. Yours might be longer, it might be shorter, but you can do this.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And it makes you wonder when you see so many people finding such success, such as you, why this isn't just the standard of care for all diabetics and all people that, employ some of these things. And I'm sure one of these days it will be, but for now, there's a lot of controversy. You've got to be feeling pretty good about your situation. And I don't get the impression you feel like you're a martyr, that you've made these terrible sacrifices and you're going to have to struggle through life. Is that right?
No, I feel healthier. I wake up clearer minded in the morning, and all my stomach problems with acid reflux are gone. And so, no, I don't think it's a burden at all. I can eat as much as I want. I'm not counting carbs. I eat till I'm full. And that's a good thing. You're not hungry during this diet.
Think about that. A diet where you're not hungry all the time. Some people complain that the low-carb diet is not sustainable, but to me, the very definition of a diet you cannot sustain and cannot live with the rest of your life is when that diet leaves you constantly hungry. But when you give your body the proteins and the fats it needs and cut down on all the junk carbs it absolutely does not need, you'll find that this kind of diet is far more sustainable than you ever imagined it would be. I want to remind you that we're starting our Spring 2023 challenge on February the 1st. Our theme is Become Non-Diabetic by Summer. What will it involve? I'll be sending you an email, usually once a week, with a link to an encouraging video made especially with you in mind. And I'll also provide links to videos by other low-carbers that will educate and motivate you in how you can make this diet work for you. I'll provide you menus which will have links to outstanding low-carb and keto cooks who will show you delicious recipes that will make your eating experience satisfying, and you'll have far more variety in your diet than you ever imagined. No, you do not have to eat eggs and bacon for every meal. I'm asking you to make some major changes in your diet and your lifestyle for a 4-month period and watch what happens to your blood sugar. I'm convinced that most of you will be amazed when you see how fast and how far your average blood sugar and your A1C will drop in those 4 short months. And also, I'm going to be sharing more from my own life, the meals I eat, the way I live to keep my blood sugar close to the normal range. I cannot take you all into our home, but through videos made with our challenge partners in mind, I'll show you the nuts and bolts of a lifestyle that I live, which keeps glucose low and energy high. So how do you become part of this challenge? There is no cost. I just need an email from you. Send an email to grace@spiritofgrace.org and write "Count Me In" on the subject line. That's grace@spiritofgrace.org. and write "Count Me In." We'll put you in our database, and in the last days of January and throughout the months of February, March, April, and May, you'll be hearing from me. God bless, and see you again soon.